calling a roll here. He is. I think he's trying to find the unmute button. Councilman Huff. Here.
Here.
Well, Becky's on virtually.
I'm here. Sorry.
Sorry, Becky, didn't mean to take your job there.
You're fine.
Okay. City manager is in charge of technology. So let's just wait a second until we get this running.
Can they do that?
No, go ahead, man.
Adam, you might want to
Move over there. Never good to have you back to the door screen.
That's for sure. Oh, God, this is gonna take forever. This is gonna take forever, so I think we just run it through this and,
Okay.
yeah.
Turn it around and we'll.
I can promise you that
The camera's going that way.
I was pointing the camera at you guys so that
Yeah.
Mike could see you.
Okay, that's fine. Great,
Does it need to be
okay,
propped up or?
I'll
we're,
prop it up.
we're good.
Give me that.
So let's go ahead and dive in.
Okay,
Good?
you're good. I can see you. I can see the council member Steinmeier. We're good to go.
Okay. So, the first thing on our agenda today is to talk about, the DKMT report that was presented to this, group and to the city council. And unfortunately, the night that it was presented to the city council was particularly challenging in terms of technology. So, I know that several of the council members wanted, more of an opportunity to look through the report. We need to decide, and I think it would be helpful for this committee to come forward with a recommendation about how. I'm gonna take this off since I feel like we're, there's no space in here, because I know it's hard to hear, yeah. So I think, I know, right, put down Lysol. But I think, we really need to, make some decisions about how we want to move forward with the DKMT report. If my memory serves me correctly, Adam, this is, part of a phased plan for addressing some of our, current and maybe, historical challenges with, Independence Power and Light. And this phase, we engaged them for $50,000 to evaluate what they believe would be the next steps in moving forward with, solving some of these issues that the council has identified that need to be addressed. And I believe that this has been presented to the PUAB. Is that correct? DKMT report? No.
The PUAB did not want to discuss
They
this.
didn't want to, okay, they didn't, okay, that's fine.
Am I remembering that right, Jen?
You're right.
they They just said, well,
They
here's
said they
the
would-
council over
we would
here.
be-
Yeah,
we would-
that's right, that's right,
yeah.
that's right. They just said, I mean, since this group was gonna get the presentation in the council, then they felt that that would be sufficient, so they haven't. So, I mean, there really hasn't been an opportunity to this point to, you know, accept or reject the report. It's, you know, we really just need to, bring forward, a recommendation about what our next steps are regarding this. So for them to fully implement all of their recommendations, the cost is approximately $250,000. Essentially, the overarching, decision for the council to make is if we want to engage in a strategic plan for the utility as we have done for the city at large. And, you know, personally, I have gone on record saying, I think that engaging in the strategic planning process for the city has been really beneficial to provide some clearer guidance that strategic planning is involves a lot of engagement with the public, with a variety of, you know, boards and commissions and partner organizations. So I think it's been, I think we've proven that that's been a very productive way about doing business. So, I mean, our strategic planning primarily for the city, we've conducted primarily with our own resources, although, you know, we have used outside consultants, I would say on a limited basis, to be able to do that. So, that's where we stand on this, and I now just think maybe we open it up for discussion from the committee about how, now that we've had some time to digest this report, hear a couple of presentations, some feedback, and next steps. Councilman Huff,
Of
I'll start with you.
course, I sit through the presentation. I was a little discouraged with it. I've brought this forth numerous times. I understand that they have to be able to analyze what's going out there to make decisions later. It's just that I don't believe they were given all the information needed for that. So that I have got my hands on all the reports, the master plan from like 2005. There was an update in 2008, which they said basically we was flying by the seat of our pants out here. We had no purpose, no goals or nothing, which I found not to be true. And I reviewed 2008, especially where it went through all the process and about all the assets of Power and Light and going through there. And we're about 4 years behind of what was recommended in 2008, from anywhere from Missouri City to the RCTs to Blue Valley. So the report was out there, but they was never given that report. And so I felt like kind of handcuffed there. I was not a real fan of their presentation. Also, I know there was questioned about the charter, and they really didn't come up with anything. I just thought it was kind of odd the way that the charter is pretty cut and clear there, and they kind of played, they would never answer anything, so I don't know if this is the right group.
What, in reference to the charter, in
I
terms
believe
of what?
Councilman Steinmeier was on that question with them.
Okay.
You might want to comment on
All right.
that.
Can I add something there?
I think that was evaluating the charter and the charter language is really beyond the scope of this initial phase of the project. So
I think
that's
that's
something
something
that,
that,
So,
the
what
desire to
specifically
evaluate
about the charter are we talking about?
But it was brought up
Yeah.
in their presentation.
it was that it needs to be, that should be part of this.
I believe, the way I understood that part of it was,
the charter should be used in the context of the strategic planning process to determine, you know, how those two need to align together. But I think them evaluating the charter, as it stands, and if IPL, the way it's being operated, is in compliance with the charter, that would be, they were, this first phase was really get an assessment going, where do we stand? Where are the hot issues that we need to identify and quickly address? And that's what that report was. And I think how the IPL is operated and the charter, marrying those two up going forward would be potentially the next step. If that were to happen. Is that fair?
Well, part of the comment was that not whether or not the charter is clear, they didn't make an assessment of that. What they pointed out though was that between various PUAB members, past council members or president, and IPL management, there has been differences of opinion.
Right.
And that's what they were pointing out, and that they felt that all of those pieces needed to come together and come to consensus on what that charter means, so that we can then chart a course forward.
Okay, so the way I, sort of understood that was that in their interviewing of council members, PUAB members, management, that this lack of consensus on certain language in the charter is creating this sort of log jam, you know, of how we envision the future of the utility, or how the utilities should be utilized, or what the charter, how the charter allows for the utilities to be leveraged in certain ways. And I know Councilman Steinmeier addressed that in the council meeting, was, you know, we just need to sit down and iron that out. That's nothing a consultant is going to do for us. I mean, that's nothing that anybody is going to do for us. And it's also not something that is going to be everlasting, because the council will change, the PUAB will change, the management will change, and they will have potentially different opinions and understandings of how that charter should be interpreted. So the way I saw it was, we need to, at this moment in time, you know, for, you know, the next period of time, 2 years until next council election or whenever that's determined, is to come to an agreement about how we're going to interpret the charter. And I mean, the city attorney can have an opinion about it. The, you know, outside, the public can have an opinion about it. But, you know, this is something that we have done in the past, you know, with varying degrees of success with other city appointed boards and commissions, of saying, you know, let's just, you know, come to an agreement for this moment in time about how we're going to address this. And it's not something that, you know, we can do that through, you know, strategic planning. We can, you know, just have a joint meeting and hammer out these issues and see if we can come to some consensus. And then everybody has to kind of commit to living with that. You know, whatever the majority decision consensus is on that. So I don't know that that's something that I feel like, I mean, a consultant can come in and tell me, well, this is how we interpret the charter, and I can say, well, I don't agree with that interpretation, and then we haven't really accomplished anything. So I just think that that's something that we need to, we need to decide, identify where the issues of disagreement might be, and then, have a working meeting together and iron them out.
Sure, my biggest deal though is, though, they were hired to run Power Light because there was, at that point, no one down there, and all of a sudden it becomes a consultant rather than what they were actually hired for. I understand that they had to have some experience, but, then again, I think that's a pretty expensive plan there myself. That's why I included Mark's thing here. I thought that it was a lot more thorough. Of course, he's been an employee. Maybe he has a lot more insight than they did. I don't know. That's why we have these two guys running the place. And, strategically, I mean, I agree we do need the strategic part of it, but, I feel like that these two men here have that capability of doing that and carrying it out rather than $250,000
Okay.
at this point. And like I said, I think Mark's report was pretty good. And there's a few things in there, but overall, I think he had a real good report there. Kind of got down to the nuts and bolts. I don't know so much of a strategic planning, as you call it. Definitely something that we could be an outline of, give us some ideas.
Councilman Steinmeier?
Yeah, first of all, I think it was Jim Nail that was speaking. Because someone in the room is speaking, it'd be helpful to know if they could just announce who it is so that I know. I think it was Jim that was speaking. My only concern with what you said, Mayor, is that, the charter to me reads quite clear, and until the voters of our city decide to change the charter, it's pretty clear how we're to run it. I mean, it gives us some clear direction. And my one concern is that we do not have a director that's his sole purpose is to lead IPL. And since the utility is to be a separate entity from the city, it's supposed to be run on its own. I've said this, and my great concern is that we have an assistant city manager who is acting director. And if we're going to be spending a lot of money, $250,000 to try to right the wrongs of IPL, I'd rather invest that into a director who's going to lead us forward, because some of the issues that the consultants addressed were internal, and those are things that either Jim has to take care of or Adam has to take care of. It's not something that I think we need to spend $250,000 to address internal issues, whatever they may be. I think we do have the ability to correct that. But to me, I'm just kind of one voice saying that the charter says what it is. We're supposed to have a director. He's supposed to be leading us forward. I think until we do that, we're just going to keep kicking this can down the road, and we're going to just let the tail wag the dog in this particular case. I'd like to see us come in, not spend the money on the plan. I don't think that report was something that satisfied a lot of my concerns and questions. And I'm just speaking for me. And I think Mark's report was much more useful for us. So that's just kind of where I stand with it.
Okay, so I'm just going to point out why this charter issue becomes such a stumbling block. I don't consider the charter to be crystal clear. I don't know what it means when it says the utility is to be operated in a business-like manner. I think that if we, asked 100 people what that means, we would come up with 60 different answers. So there's just some key terminology in that particular section of the charter that has not been defined in a way that everybody understands equally, including our staff, the public, the council, our appointed volunteers. So I think having a clear consensus on what that language means would be very helpful, because in my familiarity with the charter and obligation to follow it, I don't find it to be particularly clear in those areas. And this is something that is been debated time and time and time again, is the definition of this terminology. So there we have, I mean, therein lies the problem, the issue in regards to that. I'm never, you know, a giant fan of, spending on things that we can take care of ourselves. So you know, I'm certainly willing to say, let's take this on ourselves, get the right, you know, get the right structure, the right set of leadership to take these things on. But this council is going to need to, you know, combination of materials that we have at our disposal, the report, the management analysts report, the master plan documents that Councilman Huff referenced. Get all that stuff pulled together. You know, have the council say, these are the things that we feel are most important. I think clearly, in my mind, this FERC accounting is critically important. We are losing money by not having the right, you know, combination of expertise or manpower to be able to do that adequately. Give our employee, our city manager, the list of priorities, which we did, you know, when Adam took on this role over the utilities. You know, he laid out a work plan of priorities that we were going to march our way through, and that is very effective. And, you know, Councilman Steinmeier, you and I are cut from the same cloth. We like to take a strategic and methodical approach to things. And I think, you know, we need to provide a roadmap for our management and say, okay, and get in a room, plot it all out. What are we got? What needs to get done? Who's in charge of getting it done? When does it need to be done? And if the additional resources need to be applied to it, what is it? And just make a very simple plan about, with accountability measurements in there of, you know, what do we need to tackle? Whose job is it to get it done? And if we need to allocate additional funding towards it to get it done, what's that going to cost?
I'm with you. The only thing I would add to that, Mayor, when I'm just going to throw this out there, and you know, we're probably not going to agree on this particular section or discussion, but you know, in terms of the charter, you know, the Bondurant decision was pretty clear on how the city is to treat the utility. So we got to keep that in mind, that there was a ruling made, a case law that, back in 1980 on the relationship with the city and the utility. But anyway, I think that you're right. We need to have a strategic plan moving forward. That's part of our discussion, and we do need to address what we need to address internally. We're supposed to have the leaders in place to do that. And if there's more assistance that they need, then I think we have to talk about that. But I really believe that we need a director that is familiar with the power issues of today, and what we want to do moving forward for the taxpayers and the ratepayers of the city, and have that strategic plan in place. But I really don't think that spending valuable resources on consultants is what we need. We need to put together the right leadership group that's going to help us advance IPL forward with the many issues that we have, and of course the resource issues. But I think we have a plan that's going to work. I think as we continue to talk, and with the proper leadership, we can make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather invest in ourselves, you know, than in somebody else. There's a greater return on investment of, you know, plowing our financial resources back into our own operation. I agree with that. So, since you bring up the Bondurant, that's also a ruling that has a variety of opinions about its validity, its relationship to our charter, its application to current circumstances and the way business is done. You know, quite frankly, we challenged the Bondurant decision and nothing happened. We didn't get sued. So, you know, that's another item that is not as clear cut as, in my mind, because there is a variety of opinions on it. But again, that would be very helpful for this council and our PUAB and our staff to come to an understanding of how we are going to interpret that decision for our purposes. And, you know, when changes come, which they always do, then that's something that the next combination of people are going to have to evaluate and see if that's just a interpretation that they can also accept. And just, you know, as we've done with our strategic plan for the city with Independence for All, is that we then document the consensus and let it guide our decision making from that point forward. So I think that's an excellent way to approach it. In terms of next steps, how do you see this moving forward? We can turn this over to the city manager and say, take all of this information, the master plans, the DKMT report, whatever, you know, I'm going to set aside the management analyst for a minute because I want to discuss that separately, and say, you know, go plot this out and bring the council a plan for, implementation with, you know, what, who, when, and how much over the next 18 to 24 months. What are our benchmarks, and how are we gonna get those accomplished? And what's number one, number two, number three, number 15? Not that we can't work on things concurrently, but just map that out for us, bring it forward to the council for discussion, and then ultimately approval. And that can be at least the framework for a strategic planning model that then can be adapted as in the subsequent years as we start knocking these things out and then tackling new issues.
Yeah, just said the priorities that are set, I mean, it's every day changing. I mean, we're seeing it happen as we work down this agenda. We have things that we didn't even think about that are now come to us that we're gonna have to address. And so it's a difficult time, but we'll have to make some decisions, but I agree with you. We need to put something together. Probably, I agree with the city manager. Probably put something together to present to the rest of the council and PUAB. Of course, I want them involved.
So what we can do, let's see, what's today?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. We can, by recommendation of this committee, have Becky draft a resolution to put on the council agenda on Monday, directing the same manager to proceed with that plan. Agreement with that?
Can we do it with some type of time frame attached to it, that we're just not going to go out and then in 8 months we get something put together? I mean, because then what we're doing, because government moves slow, I mean, and it's intended to, but if we get into too far into the future, we're just going to be kicking it down to the next elected group. And I don't see the benefit of that at all. I think we need to have a time frame attached to whatever the resolution is to bring forth something that we can consider. I just don't want it to be 6 or 8 months down the road and then we bring it back up.
Oh, no, it won't. Yes, we could absolutely put a date on there when we would like to have, I mean, I may be oversimplifying this, but we have, I mean, we have all of the information provided to us. It's just a matter of, and Jim Nail's here nodding, so I mean, we haven't, we've spent the money, we've spent the time, we've exuded the energy to put this, to get these recommendations. That doesn't mean that there aren't more to come, and we're going to talk about the future of IPL here in a little while, but given the what the council has already been presented, package those together about, you know, put together how we're going to tackle this stuff, utilizing our own internal resources. And I mean, I would think that Zach could have that framework to us next month. I mean, I think if we gave them 3 or 4 weeks to, you know, schedule that meeting, get everybody in the room and whiteboard this thing out and put it in a document for the council. And then, you know, we just approve, yes, these are the tasks. This is the timeline. These are the specific individuals or positions who are responsible for getting it done. I don't see why that would take more than a few weeks to pull together.
Yeah,
How detailed do we need the city manager to be, or should we give him a short laundry list of things that we would like to have researched and proposed or discussed down the road? I mean, Mr. City Manager, how would you approach this on a scaled back model? And then how would you do something that's a little more in depth?
I'm flipping that camera around so you can see my response.
Well, I do appreciate that.
No, it was really me. I think, let me start at a high level. This is really helpful for staff. It's good when we have direction and we respond really well to that checklist. The list that was developed, 16 or 18 months ago that had 7 or 8 priorities on it, that allowed us to have some cohesion between the staff, the council, and the Public Utility Advisory Board of where should our focus and energy level be and what are the things that need to get done. And by and large, the things that were agreed to on there as priorities have now been achieved or accomplished. I mean, there's some, loose threads here and there. I don't think we've got the CT issue, combustion turbine issue all the way nailed down, but for the most part, everything came together. So I think having that, let me just agree with all of you that is a good approach. I think some level of specificity helps, but I don't think we want to go too detailed, because I think we want to be able to have that horizontal vision from the council of these things you want us to go address, and then let us bring back recommendations to you about how to tackle that work plan, and then make sure we're on the same page there. So I think knowing where you want to focus will certainly allow us to not waste a bunch of time drafting a work plan that's not in line with your priorities. So if there are specific things that are, on the mind or a definite priority, it would be good to know those so that we can make sure that that's incorporated on the list.
So
Council member, have definite priorities that you'd want to discuss?
So this is what I would, we can talk about that here, or, which is fine, or oftentimes what works well is, if individually, each council member would just, give their priorities to the city manager, then he can kind of sift out, which ones everybody wants, which ones, it's not a, popularity contest about what's most important, but that would allow Zach to understand where, people's feelings on, and I would also recommend, Jim and Adam, that we, get, some feedback from the PUAB as well as what they feel are the most critical issues that need to be addressed in this planning. And I think that would be an efficient way to do it, rather than the three of us making that determination. Each one of us probably has a little bit of a different idea about what we can, what's the biggest priority. So it generally works very well if each council member will just get together with Zach or send him an email, however you want to do it, and say, here's what I want to have on the list. And then he can kind of organize all of that. I'm just going to say right away, there shouldn't be anything that comes to the city managers, whether one person wanted it or all 7 wanted it, that shouldn't be included. Anything that out of these reports or out of all of this that we've been talking about for the last however many zillions of years, throw it in there. But, something has to be first and something has to be next and something's going to be last. And that's just the way, life is. So, let Zach and his staff take a stab at it. bring it back to the council, for a study session. We can, discuss if we want to rearrange the priorities and get to work. Let's start lining them up and knocking them out.
Well, the main thing, we want to be efficient and we want cheaper rates. Oh, that's asking a lot, but that's where it's at. In order to get business here, we got to get them rates down. We have to be efficient. So I think, yeah, I agree. We need to, everybody send their own stuff in there and city manager sift through that and figure out kind of order and roll with it.
Okay. All right, so I'll, Becky, I think you kind of got the gist of the resolution that we'll want to put on for Monday to give this direction to the city manager, by recommendation of the Utility Rates Committee. I don't have a calendar in front of me. Zach, why don't you tell Becky when you want to put that on a study session agenda to present to the council for discussion. At that meeting, we can, the council can give direction to put it on for a vote and off we go.
Okay.
But that should all happen, certainly, in the next 6 weeks, I would think, so we can complete all the preparation.
Is it appropriate to also include the PUAB in terms of long-range planning and what their review of the recommendations by the reports that we want to follow? I mean, is that something we want to include to the city manager as well?
I'm not quite following you. I'm sorry.
Well, part of the PUAB responsibilities is to be a part of the discussion on, recommendations from consultants, long-range planning. Do we want to include them in the discussion, or is that something that you just want to stay strictly with the city council?
No, when's the PUAB scheduled to meet next?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Next Tuesday.
I was kind of poking around at the calendar here, and it looks like there's an October 15th meeting of the PUAB to where we could probably have a good fluid draft presented to
Well,
them.
so before we do that, I want to give the PUAB the same opportunity that the council has, which is, now, I don't necessarily, no offense to the PUAB, need each one of them to develop their own priority list. I would like for them at that meeting in 2 weeks to collectively give that same feedback and say, this is what, after our review of all of this stuff,
It's next Tuesday.
or next Tuesday, if you feel like that would be doable, say, this is the approach that we are intending to take. We still might spend $250,000. I don't know. I mean, we could. I mean, this, depending on what the, how this proceeds, but it will be at least primarily with our, investing in our own resources. But, they've had a chance to hear the presentations. They hope read these reports. Certainly been involved with all these discussions over the last few years. So it would be very helpful if they would engage in the same activity that we are engaging in today and say, what are the things that we think are most critical? We can add those to the planning process that Zach's going to coordinate. And I will always remind the PUAB, the other authority they have is to hold public hearings. So if they, want to do that and get public input, that's within their authority to do. They don't need permission from the council. They can simply, put that on their agenda. So. Does that sound acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. Does that sound acceptable to you, Mike Steinmeier?
Yes, yeah, it was just really an open end. I just wanted to get yours and council member Huff's feedback if you felt that would be appropriate, since we're talking about these things moving forward. And they've had time to look at both of the reports as well to just understand what their recommendations would be.
Okay. Great. Let me talk a little bit more about, the performance audit. I had, I don't know, kind of a mixed reaction, I would say. I thought, there was, like with everything, there was some good things, there were some things that kind of, was questionable about. Some of them, I'm not sure that there were a lot of things in here that are contractual with the IBEW Local 53, which are relevant, but I certainly don't think that I would be in favor of opening the contract to address these when we just finished negotiating a contract.
Right, that's just a 1 year though, right?
Yeah, it's a 1 year. I mean, so there's things, or 2 year. It's a 2
Or
year.
it's 2 years?
It's a 2 year.
But we're basically through the first year already.
So, this, particular audit, I'm just gonna be totally frank about this, has been done a little bit haphazardly in terms of what's outlined in the code about how these are supposed to go. And I'm gonna say I take full and total responsibility for perhaps not guiding the management analysts the way the council should have in terms of following proper procedure. I'm, a stickler for process, and it just hasn't been exactly precise in following our adopted process, and but we have a chance to, get it a little bit more on track. And it doesn't impact what's in the report. But this is, I believe, on the council agenda as an information only item for this coming Monday. And the recommendation from the Audit and Finance Committee is just to kind of keep monitoring these recommendations, which I'm just confused. I'm just gonna be honest that I don't understand what that exactly means. And again, that's not what our adopted process that's in our city code of ordinances says. This needs to be adopted by the council as a whole, not just by the Audit and Finance Committee. So I'd like to just, if we certainly can discuss this on Monday night, even though it's listed as an information only item, that doesn't mean that we can't talk about it. And again, kind of go through these recommendations one at a time and see. Some of them aren't things some of them require the council to give direction to the city manager. The recommendations are, instruct the city manager to do X, Y, and Z. So we either need to give that instruction or not give it. So but to be, in compliance with our code of ordinances, this conversation has to happen at the full council meeting. Not, there's nothing in the ordinance that says that this is gonna come to a different committee other than audit and finance. So, I mean, I just don't wanna get into this too deeply. We can do that at the full council meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So this isn't really, a document that we can utilize until the council adopts it. Right now it's just kind of a little bit for my comfort level in a little bit of no man's land. So let's get this, where it needs to be so that Zach and the staff can use it appropriately in developing this plan moving forward. Okay, next on the agenda is future of IPL, or what was the other thing?
Customer service.
Customer service. All right.
The customer service, just wondering how, what's coming along with the collections, number one. I know that we've got the CARES money and able to help out some people out there. Hopefully get that shifted around. I realize you're with, you're gonna have the cold part of it, that we adopted to, can't shut them off or whatever. And I'm not after that at all, one way or the other. But one of my biggest things that come about here in recent weeks is that I'm getting a lot of feedback that it's really not Power and Light, it's the water company, is waiting over an hour to talk to a customer service person. And I don't know, hopefully that's been corrected. But I had numerous calls, including myself called, and I was on there for 45 minutes. I don't think that's acceptable. At least someone needs to get on there and say hi, bye, or something besides just.
Call it back.
But I just wanted to make sure, I know I talked to the city manager about it. He agreed it was unacceptable. Someone's an hour, especially a new customer or business or something. And I know that it's not a Power and Light thing, but it's where everybody gets that confused. It's all about Power and Light. Power and Light's the building. It's not Power and Light. It's the water company does the building, not
Right.
Power and Light. I'm kind of like whipping on that weekly, but so just something I wanted to throw out there that, I know we're only working at half staff and all this stuff, but we really had somebody answering the phone.
So Zach, is this part of our quarterly performance measurement is wait times and, all of that? I mean, that's something that we measure in our performance dashboard, right?
Yeah, that's something, and we have, and I don't remember offhand, but we have a target benchmark of what we want that to be. And I can tell you, last quarter, it didn't hit the mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And I understand the virus and everything,
Mhm.
everything going on,
Sure.
but still not an excuse for somebody sitting online for no hour.
Well, and another issue that we had, Councilmember Huff and I, when we were coming in the building Monday, there was a gentleman who came up to pay his utility bill. And of course, the building was closed. And he said, well, I looked online and there was no adjustment on time. So he made the drive up to City Hall and of course he got there past 3 o'clock and it was closed. So, and he had said that he had called in as well and just decided he was just going to bring it by. So these are things that I hope because we've talked about these things that we need to get if it isn't changed, I haven't looked recently, the times, the new times for our operating hours, they need to be communicated better.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And we'll talk with, Meg and our communication staff about how we can make that more visible to the public. I think people kind of, this state of emergency has become kind of the normal for the moment, and I think people kind of forget that we're, that we aren't under normal operating, procedures right now, so we need to remember to continue to reinforce that with the public about, what our hours are, when people are available. I mean, certainly waiting on hold for, an hour is not acceptable. So, I mean, it's something we've struggled with for many, many years is, how do we have a effective telephone system, or, I mean, do we have a chat function on our utilities pages that people can, if they just have a quick question, can we do a chat function, a text line? I mean, something besides, Mayberry, dial the telephone and we don't. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, there was. Can you turn the volume up?
Love listening to you guys, but that echo is, that's fun too.
Changes in the phone system, because I was concerned about that as we started going through shutoffs again. One idea was if the wait time is, 10 minutes or something like that, hey, enter your number, we'll call you back.
Sure.
That is an expensive investment in our phone system, right? And so that's something we're looking at next budget year, but mid-year, trying to make that investment in our system would be pretty tough.
I really think a lot of it, Adam, is the Mondays, because it seemed like this guy was down here Monday.
Right.
I got my phone calls on Monday. I made a phone call. I think that from Friday to Monday, and then at Monday, we need to have personnel in there answering that phone at that time. Now, Tuesday through Friday, it might not, the wait time might drop to 15 minutes. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that Monday seemed like everybody's hitting. My lights are out since Friday. I need to pay.
Yeah, everybody wants to get their business done on Monday.
It's just managing staff. I would, be my deal that I think, but I don't know.
What about a live chat function? Is that something we could?
That would probably be part of the phone upgrade, and I think we need to definitely look at that stuff from a customer service standpoint, because it doesn't just affect, hey, it's bad IPL customer service, it's city service. I mean, and that's an important thing. It creates perception, and it's part of our brand, and it all matters. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Anything else on that? Okay.
Oh, boy.
Spielberg over there. All right, future of IPL. Okay, the future of IPL, the cleanest, most reliable, most affordable, most efficient utility
In the world.
in the world.
Perfect.
Okay, take it away.
I have just a few key points that I wanted to go over. Number one, of course, a couple weeks ago, PNC Power and Light said there's a good chance they're going to shut down early on their coal-fired units. Same with Nebraska too, is kind of shaky what they're doing. And so, of course, that's really rattled the city. That was to happen, especially, since that's our base load there. And so I think that it's, with bond money being at its all-time low, all these things going on around us, that we probably need to look and expedite something, either buying into something that already exists, building our own. I know that in the last 2 years, well, since this committee's been, the mayor and I, Tom Van Camp was on at that point, have always had this on the radar. It's just that it's kicking the can down the road like normal. And can's flat, rusted, and it's not gonna be kicked too much longer, especially if these, they decide to do this. It's very, very detrimental to the city. Like I said, the bond, I got a few key points here. The bond money is all its all-time low right now. That was demonstrated at the last council meeting with redoing the bonds, so that's very important. I think the citizens of the city need to think about what's going on here. We've seen it, all over the country, the blackouts and stuff, the brownouts, whatever you call them, happen quite a bit. I just, I feel like that we really need to move forward on this. And I call it a new IPL type of deal. And a new IPL will attract capital investment to our city, which means jobs, which we're all about here. A new IPL will give the city the ability to sell energy and help repay for the investment. New IPL will bring more affordable rates to ratepayers. That's very, very important. Through time, since I've been on this council, I've promoted buying power, some base load, and if we didn't use it, we could sell it. One example is the Oneida thing we got into. If we call them up, people need to understand that is not base load. That is only capacity. If you call them today and said, I need that 50 megawatts for the next year, you're not getting 50 megawatts from nobody down there. It's just a paper twist. And so I know that I entertained Dogwood, and while some of the city people out there alluded that would benefit me, and I've always disagreed and will continue, but I will agree that there's certain unelected groups out there that propose initiatives that would certainly benefit from the group of researchers and members. And, I just think that this just really get tired of being criticized by outside groups. And I think that the mayor and the council up there are more than qualified to make some decisions here. Figure this thing out. I know, Jim, you've been around long enough in utilities that this is big time. This is not a game. So.
Well, are you done? I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Keep going.
Go ahead.
I see this as a huge opportunity for us, because we hold certain authorities that, we were very cautious and give a lot more thought to say, when we're not going to give up our ability to have a utility. When we did decommission Missouri City, when we stopped production out at the Valley, but we still have, that piece of paper that lets us, be a utility, an electric utility. It's remarkable to me, and I always like reading in the Examiner every Saturday, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And what you come to realize is very little changes. The wheel comes back around. And this discussion of building our own new power plant, back then it was a clean coal-fired plant. I remember that discussion happening years ago, and then the industry changed, regulations changed, everybody thought everything was going a different direction. Things changed. That's why we spent all the money that we spent in Blue Valley was, to rev it back up when we thought that we were probably going to close it down and do something else. So, you have to be we have to be adaptable enough to the change in circumstances and the changes in opportunity. So I think that this is something with the announcement by Evergy, you know, the knowledge about Nebraska City, is where do we want to plug in? Do we want to be an owner? Do we want to be a partner? Do we want to be a buyer? Do we want to be a seller? And that's just a discussion that isn't going to wait very long for us to try to get in the game. I mean, if we just want to be a buyer, then, you know, that's not an urgent decision. But if we want to be a seller and and create some, you know, create some cash flow for our city, then that's something that we need to take very seriously, and we need to do it very quickly.
Yeah, you know, along with this thing, you was to look into building a power plant. We had a partner in, of course, the city would get their, you know, the pilot off of that also. But, you know, the bonds are very, very low, the interest, but also the power is, and I've been preaching that for a couple of years now, that power is at its all-time low. We should be buying power and, you know, base load. Of course, we didn't need it, but we could also sell it even if we broke even. At least we have it now. Since this has happened, besides the virus, the price of material equipment has went up tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're at a higher price to build a power plant. Number two, Dogwood, for instance, I mean, they know they're sitting on a very nice thing right now. I imagine their prices have already went up, whatever they have left to sell. But, you know, to me, what we need to be doing probably is throwing it out there for somebody to take hold of this and figure out what's our best way. And I don't know. I was in business for 35 years, and I never claimed to be an expert, never will. I don't think anybody could be an expert in the utility business, mainly because it's ever changing. If we'd have known this was happening, we'd have went all different ways. But you can call yourself whatever you want out there, but there's no such thing as an expert when it comes to power. It's just too volatile. No one ever knows. So there's one thing on the charter too that I like, because I always like to go back to the charter, and it does require us to have a power and light or utility. So I think that's very important too, that we support the charter at this time. Like I said, it's home for negotiations or whatever down the road.
So, and Councilman Steinmeier, let me just, I'll get to you in just a second. I recall digging into that portion of the charter when we were talking about getting out of production entirely, and you know, asking, are we required to produce any energy in order to meet that charter mandate? I mean, does that mean that can we fulfill that and still meet the charter if we're only doing distribution and no production? And, you know, the answer was yes. I mean, you know, that's, we were still considered a utility under those circumstances. But again, I think that this is another justification of saying, you know, we really need to schedule some time to look at these definitions in the charter and put some, or this terminology in the charter and clearly define it so we're all have the same understanding of what it means or how we are going to utilize it. Councilman Steinmeier?
Well, when I read the charter, it says, you know, that we shall operate. And so I think that, you know, operating something is there's motion involved to it. So I believe that the city has a treasure, and that's our ability to have a utility. And having lived in cities and having a son who still lives in a city that is experiencing rolling blackouts, grayouts, those kind of things, they're not pleasant. They're not something I wish upon our citizens. We have a real treasure in the ability to have an operating utility. And so for me, the one thing that has changed is the cost to rebuild. And I took the time this morning, went back and looked at some old news articles that go back to 2011. And all the recommendations and renewable energy was a big topic. And I think we have to be responsible to the environment with whatever decision we make. But we're finding that a lot of countries and cities and states rushed into renewable energy as we know it with solar and wind. And now this equipment is reaching its life cycle, and now they're under under pressure to figure out what do we do with these aged and dying renewable energy equipment. They don't have a place to recycle it. They don't know what to do with it. It's not like we can take those old solar panels and put them out and Republic's going to pick it up, or Ted's Trash or AAA. They're not going to do that. So we have to be responsible with what we decide to do moving forward. But I can tell you that if we'd had the leadership and the decisions, 9 years ago, our power plant would cost the taxpayers a lot less money in terms of material and cost. So my hope is that we'll stay on line with having a utility that is a treasure for this city and the future of our city and for the future residents and ratepayers of this city. And we'll explore all avenues that are responsible. The technology's changed, the science has changed. We have a lot of choices to be very responsible to the environment and to our ratepayers without putting them into huge financial debt. I think we have the council in place to really have that open discussion. We have the benefit of having, a council member who has the utility experience that we can draw on. And I think we should listen to some of those recommendations. But it's my hope that we utilize what the city has and rebuild for the future something that we can give to the next generations to come of residents here, where they can still live in an affordable places. We don't know what's going to happen to energy. It's a precious commodity, and we have to be responsible with it. But we need to really dig in and discover the types of energy that we want to invest in, and do it economically, I think. And that's going to be our challenge. But I think we can do it. I really do. It just takes leadership and the ability to take some risk.
Okay. So just to summarize a little bit, I would like for us to pursue, these opportunities, but I also don't want to muddy the waters with just general operational things that we need to take care of. So I just want to be cautious about not adding this into what we were talking about earlier and making this a priority, because no matter where we go in the future, our here and now it has to be, improved and sort of, addressed. And so this mistake happens time and time again over many different entities and organizations and whatever, is that you get focused on the shiny object, and then all these reports and things that we've worked on just kind of get put on the back burner. So, as we're having this discussion, I think that what we need to also consider is, what other resources do we have at our disposal in terms of, you know, study, evaluation, pursuit of partners, perhaps in this endeavor that we can leverage. I mean, various, you know, economic development organizations that we're part of, national organizations, that we're a part of, you know, and just making sure that we're tapping into all those resources and not just, you know, taking something else on that's going to distract from what we need to, you know, do with our current operations. So, I mean, that's as we're plotting out how to attack these different things, I just want to make sure that we kind of keep these things separated, so that, quite frankly, so that we achieve success quickly in dealing with the identified issues that we've been struggling with for, you know, quite some time. And, you know, getting our house in order, while we also think about how do we do better to benefit the ratepayers of our utilities and our local economy. So.
Well, I agree with you, Mayor. I'm just saying in terms of what I go back and read 9 years ago, we're still pretty much in the same position. We've made a couple of mistakes along the way, but we have to have the short term, which I think we're managing right now, but we also have to be intent on the long term, and that is deciding what we want to do, what that looks like, and begin to put those steps in place. We're managing the short term right now the best we can, and we're fortunate that, like Councilmember Huff said, is that we have, you know, energy available to us that's it's reasonable in terms of price, but that could change. And if they drop out and shut down, if we see that happen, that could change the whole environment and dynamic of cost. And so I know that's what I know you feel the same way, but I'm just saying I'm not losing sight of the short term and the managed process that we have in place now, but we're 9 years down the road and we're still talking about the same things. I mean, at some point we have to say, yeah, we've got to get real serious about what we're going to do. That's or sell it. That's the other option.
So I've been on this council 8 years, and I can shed some light on why we haven't made as much progress as we'd like to all see, and it's because we don't have a strategic plan. I mean, it was because there was no roadmap that the council committed to, and every time there's a new idea, every time there's a new election, every time, you know, there's the wind changes direction, you know, you're just off on a new pathway, and that's been the frustration. So I'm very excited that now, you know, this meeting today, we are going to remedy that, or that's our intent to remedy that. And, you know, that's, I think, a huge accomplishment is to be able to say, you know, let's put together our goals, put measurables to each one of them, who's doing it, when is it getting done, and start chipping away at some of the, you know, the annoying distractions that have prevented us from thinking in this larger, futuristic way of the longer term. So I think we're in a position that I've wanted to be in for a long time, that we just have not been able to achieve for a variety of different reasons, but one of primarily, I would say, is a lack of, focus on mapping out the goals and how we're gonna get there. So I'd be really curious to talk more about this potential of, are we gonna buy, are we gonna build? And, who we need to, what kind of expertise we need to engage in that conversation, not just from the energy side, but from investment side, business planning and all that. So I think that's really, really exciting. And I think we have a lot of, smart people on our council who can help us to connect with the appropriate, resources to give us a clearer picture of what that would, first of all, which direction we want to go, and then what would it take to get there.
There's another thing, if you dig up that master plan and everything, it's right in there to build a power plant. I mean, it's just one of the things. I want to throw a little bit more into this thing. I want people to really understand. I know there's a big deal about renewables and stuff, and I'm for that. I mean, I'm for saving the planet myself, but I want people to be very, very aware of that. Renewables are not considered base load. You cannot use them. You see it in California, it doesn't work. One day the sun doesn't shine, wait 3 or 4 days. That's what you're basing on. You're in trouble because these businesses won't have, you're going to create the light switch on our business who's trying to do something that's not going to happen. So something to keep in mind. I know that everybody's looking that way, but through many states that have done it, it just doesn't really work out. It's not really, you cannot consider it base load.
So the renewables, I mean, I've always looked at that and, we built 2 solar farms, since the time I've been around on this council, and I'm proud of them. I mean, I'm just gonna tell you that. I mean, I'm proud that we did it. It was in response to a demand from the community who wanted to have choices, and we provided choices. I mean, no one ever said it was gonna be the cheapest option, no one ever said that, but our community wanted choices, and we've given them those, or we had industries that we were that we wanted to be in the in consideration for, who demand that they have renewable energy, and so we wanted to be able to provide that. And everything evolves and changes, and we need to, like everything else, think about long-term maintenance of that equipment and prepare for that and understand what our, how to leverage that for some really interesting opportunities as well. I mean, the wind has been, not, has really kind of, in my mind, fallen off recently, but we can, if we just want to be, deliver the cheapest energy, we can do that. But, we want to be a little more broad than that and think about the attraction and think about the values of our community and what people, the options that they ask to have available to them. And this was certainly one of them.
It's funny you say that about the solar being not the cheapest, but if this thing goes with Nebraska and they shut down the scene, they shut down I-10, that might be the cheapest source at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, people need to really understand this is big. Start losing the base load. This is all over the country. I don't know, Jim, you know about that. So something we really need to concentrate on and expedite. Not making a decision today, but we have a little bit of time. I was reading that article on that, but it does take 3 to 5 years to build a power plant.
Mm-hmm.
And with this virus, it probably take 7 or 8, and you can't get any material here. So, I think that, it all needs to be vetted and figured out and just get some real feedback from the citizens of the city, since they're the ones that's gonna be paying for it. And, like I said, I want the most efficient and, least expensive electric out there. So, and I think we can get there. I think we have, like I said, a real asset out there. And so we do have that permit still, so we're smart enough not to let that thing go. So we can actually work on something out there if that's the way that the citizens and the council and the mayor decides that's what they want to do. That's all I have.
Okay. Anything else, Councilman Steinmeier?
No, I'm excited about, just even having the discussions. So I'm grateful, Mayor, for, you wanting to, discuss these issues, and Councilmember Huff as well. And I think that, these are the expectations of our citizens and ratepayers, is that we're going to engage in these discussions and not just, not just listen to the complaints day to day, but look at what we need to be doing, as a city long term. And Mayor, I'm in no way, I didn't intend to indict any council prior to that. I mean, I'm just stating and facts. I'll let you do that. I mean, I'm new to the game, but and it wasn't my intent to indict any council of the past. I just know that we've been talking about it. It's been written about in the Examiner. Like I said, I read a bunch of it this morning. So I look at it and go, gosh, government's good at talking. We've got to be a government of action, and I'll be that squeaky wheel. And I'm hard headed enough to, that I'm probably going to have to be clubbed a few times, but I want to see something happen and something for our generations to come of residents and ratepayers that we can pass on to them and keep Independence a very affordable, quality, wonderful city that I grew up in and love. So, and I know that's your heart too. So I appreciate the discussion.
Thank you. Adam, anything else on our agenda? Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you.